Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dennis Prager Show, where we really do talk about everything in life. 6 minutes past the hour. The Case Against Homework is the name of this book, How Homework is Hurting Our Children and What We Can Do About It. When I tell you, folks, the story of me and homework, I will alienate a certain percentage of you. When you hear how little I did when I was in high school, I still marvel at the fact that I graduated. I have, for those of you who think I'm conservative, please know that I have the most radical views on schooling imaginable. The co-author of this book, The Case Against Homework, is Nancy Kalish. She's a former senior editor at Child and a columnist for Redbook. Nancy Kalish could have no idea that Redbook magazine changed my life. It did. I will tell you the story later. I give you my word, it is literally true. And it's a really fun story. In any event, the book, again, The Case Against Homework. Nancy Kalish, welcome to the Dennis Prager Show.
Hi, Dennis. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, let's really understand here. What is it you are proposing?
Basically, I used to be a true believer in homework as a parent, and I used to actually write those articles for Child and Redbook about how to get your kid to knuckle down and do it. And stop complaining. But, you know, what happened is when my daughter started getting incredibly overloaded with homework. And
wait, what grade?
In 7th grade.
7th grade,
lucky.
Go ahead.
Now they get overloaded earlier.
Yeah.
She started to say she hated school, like, every day. And I started to see all her love of learning sort of completely drip away bit by bit.
That's
and
right.
So I started to look into the research for the first time. I have to admit, I'm really ashamed to admit, in fact, that I didn't look into the research before when I was writing all those articles. And I was astounded and then frankly furious when I found out that the research just doesn't support overloading our kids like this. We are making a huge mistake.
Well, hold on. You see, the problem there is, by the use of the word overloading, you've, of course, shaped the argument in your favor. I happen to agree with you, but
okay.
One man's overloading is the next guy's not overloading.
Well, let me give you some examples. The National Education Association supports 10-minute, which is an association of millions of teachers.
Yeah, we're aware of it. It's not my favorite group.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
Sorry. Also, the National
No, that's
PTA.
fine. I don't care. Go ahead. Cite it. What do they say?
Right, the National PTA also, and many experts support 10 minutes per grade level per night. So that's 10 minutes for a first grader, 30 minutes for a third grader, 90 minutes for a ninth grader, and so on, up to a maximum of 120 minutes for high school. Okay, so when we started interviewing parents around the country, we found many first graders with more than an hour of homework, many third graders tackling 2 or 3, high schoolers tackling 5. My own daughter was...
High schoolers with 5 hours homework?
5 hours of homework. My own daughter, in 7th grade, all of a sudden went from a manageable amount to 4 hours plus a night and every day on the weekend. And you know what started to happen, and this is why alarm bells first went off in my head. The homework took over our lives. We could no longer have dinner together. She couldn't go to her grandfather's birthday party. It's just we couldn't have conversations. Everything revolved around homework. When we went across the country and interviewed parents and kids, we found out that kids are giving up all sorts of extracurricular activities they love, reading for pleasure, going to Bible study groups. I mean, really important, key things. And again, the research, which I'd be happy to tell you about, just doesn't support it.
Why did this happen?
Well, I think there's a mistaken belief that, in America, we always think that more is better, and it seems that it would make sense with homework. I mean, if you think about it, you'd think, more practice has to lead to, more learning, better knowledge. But the truth is it doesn't. What happens is after a certain point, kids developmentally are just not able to cope with doing more than a certain amount of homework. They're not able to focus for longer. They're not able to absorb the information. So when you force them to sit there and do it, and for many kids it's like literally doing their taxes every night, what happens is they start to burn out and hate learning.
That's right.
And it's really destructive and counterproductive, and we're not getting the, super uber students that we want and expect. And let me just say that this is not just me. A 2006 review of 180 studies on homework by Duke University, which is pretty much all the studies that are out there on homework, found that there is almost zero correlation between homework and any kind of academic success in elementary school and long-term learning, a very moderate correlation in middle school. And even in high school, where there is a correlation, those benefits max out at 2 hours. And after 2 hours, they start to rapidly diminish. So it's just not worth it. We're really torturing our kids for nothing. And one of the things, Dennis, that really broke my heart when I started to look into this subject is, in contrast, there's a huge University of Michigan study that came out in 2004. And it said, it said? The single strongest predictor of a child's academic success, as well as lower drug use and alcohol use, better eating habits, and better behavior, was the family dinner hour. Eating dinner as a family was the most important predictor of a kid's academic success, as well as these other things. And when I look back over the last year where my daughter was so overloaded with homework, I could literally count on my fingers, how many times we had dinner together. And it just broke my heart.
Or another way of putting it is the bonds with the family are more important. See, I have said this. This is an example, Nancy, of where I tell my listeners over and over my view of studies, that in 99% of the cases, they either confirm common sense or they're wrong. That is my view of studies, and I cannot think of almost any exception. And I have said this to my listeners all the time. First of all, why don't people apply the rules to their children that they do to themselves? Do they do 5 hours of homework?
Absolutely.
Well, why don't people come home and do 5 hours of work?
You're so right. If they had jobs like that, most of them would quit it. And yet they think nothing of subjecting their kids to it.
Yes, exactly. That's why, by the way, though this is a separate subject, I said, why don't we apply these criteria generally? People say it's wrong to reward kids monetarily for grades. Now, I'm not a big fan of it, but I have no problem with it. We get rewarded for our work. Why can't they get rewarded for theirs? We have very different criteria for our children's work than for our own.
Yes, we do, and we manage to forget that kids, all these magazine articles, and I've written some of them, are always, telling us to find more balance in our lives and to relax and de-stress, and yet that all goes out the window with our kids, who are even less able to cope with this kind of stress. I mean, if you talk to kids around the country, it's really frightening. A lot of them really don't like learning anymore. They're so
exactly. I love learning because I didn't do homework in high school. I'm not kidding.
I believe you.
I was so lucky that I was given this insight as a kid. I said, I don't care what college I go to. I told my parents, to their great frustration, but I'm not going to do all this homework. I am going to live life, and I did. And this is what parents need to understand, and they don't. They get carried away because the experts are giving the homework, and the word expert ends all discussion.
It's true. It's true. And, it goes beyond also just hurting your bonds with your family and hurting a kid's love of learning. I really think that there are other things that are suffering as well. For instance, I truly think that there is a big connection between homework and the childhood obesity problem in the United States. There are dozens and dozens of studies showing that sitting and watching hours of television contributes to childhood obesity. Well, what do most kids do when they get home from school? Instead of going out to play like they used to when we were kids, their house rule generally is that you have to sit down and do your homework first before you can do anything else. By that time, they're too exhausted to go out and play. Mentally and physically, it's dark a lot of the time, especially in the winter. And, they're sitting still for hours and studying, and they're not burning those calories. As well as, we had many child development experts, there's that word expert, but many child development psychologists and other experts tell us and pediatricians tell us exercise and physical activity is so important to kids, not only physical development, but mental development. It actually helps create those, neurons connections in the brain. And when kids aren't doing
All right, hold on there, Nancy Kalish. Her book, folks, The Case Against Homework, How Homework is Hurting Our Children and What We Can Do About It. I'll take your calls, 1-8-PRAGER-776, The Dennis Prager Show.